Before we jump into today's story, drop a quick comment to say hi, tell me your name, where you're watching from, and let me know if you're sticking around till the end. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with your friends. Alright, let's get into the story. I don't know if anyone will ever believe me. Maybe that's fine. Maybe this is just for me. But if you're reading this, then I need you to understand something. What happened to me on Ashford Lane wasn't just a nightmare. It wasn't in my head. It was real. Friends, you enjoy listening to stories, but you don't subscribe to the channel or like the videos. I request you to please subscribe to the channel right now so that I get more motivation to bring you even more stories. If you help me reach 1,000 subscribers, I promise to bring you extremely scary stories with a truly real feel. 2 horror stories every single day. So go ahead, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and now let's move on to today's story. I moved from Chicago to Ashford, Massachusetts in the fall of 2021. I had been looking for peace after a brutal divorce, and I wanted distance from everything, the city noise, the people, the reminders of my old life. When my realtor told me about the old colonial just a few miles outside town, sitting on a quiet piece of land surrounded by oak and birch trees, I felt something inside me click. The house at 412 Ashford Lane was older than the United States itself. White paint peeled off its wood siding, tall windows stared out blankly like empty eyes, and the roof sagged as if it had grown weary. But the price was shockingly low. I should have asked why. No one had lived there in decades, the realtor said. Folks around here call it the Ashford House, she explained quickly, like she didn't want to say too much. It's got history. History. That word should have been enough. I signed the papers anyway. The first night was quiet, too quiet. The only sounds were the crickets and the sighing of autumn wind through the trees. I set up a mattress on the bare floor of the upstairs bedroom, too tired to unpack anything. But around 3 a.m., I woke up. Something had pulled me from sleep, like the sensation of somebody standing too close. My chest was heavy. The air seemed thicker than it had when I went to bed. I turned over. The bedroom door was open. I knew I had closed it. The hall beyond was pitch black, even though there was a window at the end of it. The darkness seemed wrong, like it wasn't just absence of light, but something denser. For one long second, I thought I saw movement ripple within it. I got up and shut the door, locked it, sat back down with my heart pounding. It was my imagination, I told myself. Old houses make noises, creaks, drafts. But as I drifted back into uneasy sleep, I thought I heard whispering behind the closed door. I didn't tell anyone at first. Why would I? I had just moved into a creaking, centuries-old house. Of course I was hearing things. But by the third night, I couldn't dismiss it. The whispering was clearer now, not just sounds, but words. And not just one voice, but many. They never spoke in unison, and they never spoke loudly, but I could tell they were all circling the same phrase: "Get out." At dawn, silence always returned, and every morning when I went downstairs, I found the chairs in the kitchen turned slightly away from the table. I tried asking around town about the house. Most people clammed up when I mentioned 412 Ashford. A few would just shake their heads as if I'd struck some nerve. But one night, at a small bar, after 3 beers, an old man told me, "They buried her under the floorboards, you know, long time ago. That's why it don't stay quiet there. Never has, never will. She was just a girl." I asked him, who? He wouldn't say. After a week of living with the whispers, I decided to investigate. The boards near the center of the living room were warped, almost like something beneath them was pushing upward. One night, I pried them up with a crowbar. The smell was the first thing. Even though whatever was beneath had to be centuries old, the air that ballooned out of the gap was stifling, metallic, and rotten. I lowered my phone flashlight into the black cavity beneath. The beam landed on bones, small ones, fragile ones. A human skeleton curled up into a fetal position, and around its skull was a burlap sack. There were scratch marks gouged into the wood from inside the cavity. That night, I dreamed of her, a girl with hollow sockets where her eyes should have been, skin pale as paper, hair falling across her face in clumps. I tried to scream, but no sound left my throat. When I woke, dirt was under my fingernails, and the whispering wasn't just outside the door anymore. It was inside the room.
Things spiraled fast after that. Lights flickered on their own. My reflection in the bathroom mirror lagged, looking at me for a full 2 seconds after I had turned my head. Shadows clustered at the foot of my bed, even when the moonlight was bright enough to expose every corner. The doorknobs rattled every night. Sometimes they would turn. One night, I recorded audio on my phone just to see if I was losing it. The next morning, I played it back. What I heard wasn't just whispers. It was screaming. Hours of relentless, overlapping screaming so loud it distorted the speaker. And beneath it all, a single phrase repeated over and over. "You are mine now." I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. My skin turned gray, my eyes hollow. One evening, I drove my car into town and begged the first priest I could find to come with me to bless the house. When we returned, everything inside was quiet. Too quiet. The priest sprinkled holy water, muttering Latin, until he froze halfway through. His eyes widened, and a glass vial in his hand shattered. He whispered something I'll never forget. "She doesn't want me. She wants you." And then he walked out, leaving me there alone. I don't know if you'll believe me, but this is what happened. The last night, the entire house began to shake. Plaster rained down from the walls, picture frames splintered, every door slammed open and shut with such force I thought the hinges would tear off. And in the middle of it all, she appeared. Not in my dreams, in the flesh. The eyeless girl crawled out from beneath the floorboards, dragging her brittle skeleton body behind her. Her jaw unhinged, wider than it should have, splitting to the sides, her scream rattling the glass of every window. She lunged. Her fingers wrapped around my ankle, cold, sharp, wrong. And then, blackness. When I woke, it was daylight. I was in my car, parked a mile down the road from Ashford Lane. The house was barely visible through the trees. I never went back, but I know I didn't imagine it. I feel her still, even now. At night, when I try to sleep in my new apartment, far away from Massachusetts, I hear it again. The rattle of doorknobs, the soft shuffle of dirt under fingernails. And sometimes, I swear someone whispers right against my ear, "You are mine now." After the night I saw her crawl out of the floorboards, I promised myself I was done. I wasn't going back. I wasn't stupid. But about a week later, I found myself scrolling through old records at the Ashford Town Library. I couldn't stop thinking about her. The girl's eyeless face, her bones buried under my living room. The library smelled like dust and history. The floorboards creaked underfoot in ways that made me freeze, recalling my house. I asked the librarian about the Ashford property. She looked at me too long before answering. It's never done anyone any good searching about that place. But when I wouldn't leave, she brought me a stack of old regional records, yellowed and water-stained. That's where I found it. A story buried in an 1803 Town Gazette. Local girl, name withheld by request of family, found guilty of witchcraft. Evidence of unnatural practices discovered beneath home. Sentenced with no trial, bound and buried alive beneath her family's floor to silence her screams. The article insisted she had cursed the land, that no crops grew, no family thrived after her punishment. Her name scratched faintly in the margin, in another hand, read, Eleanor Bishop. I tried to leave it there, but I couldn't. The dreams clawed at me, dragging me into the memory of her staring sockets. Every day since, my body seemed weaker, thinner, like she had carried something of me away that night. Finally, I drove back. The house loomed darker than before. The white paint had peeled further, shutters hung crooked, and wild ivy strangled the front porch. It hadn't even been a month, but it looked years older. I stepped inside. The air was bitter, metallic. I could hear faint scratching under my feet. That's when I realized something impossible. The floorboards I had pried open were whole again. No cracks, no loose splinters. It was as though nothing had ever been ripped open. That night, the house didn't whisper. It screamed. Voices thundered from every wall, voices in languages I didn't know. My vision blurred, like the corners of the room were melting. My chest squeezed so tight I couldn't breathe. And then, in the mirror above the fireplace, I saw her. Not behind me, in place of me. Her thin, bony hands where mine should have been, her eyeless sockets in place of my eyes, her mouth stretching open, wider, until it was nothing but void. I smashed the mirror. Blood slicked my hands, but when I looked down, they weren't my wounds. Thin, delicate scratches covered my skin, the kind a child's nails would make.
The next morning, two locals stood at the edge of my driveway, the old man from the bar and a woman in her 80s. "You need to leave," the woman said, her voice trembling. "She's marked you now. Once she chooses, the house doesn't stop. You'll waste away like all the others." I demanded to know what she meant. The old man's face hardened. "Anyone who stays too long in that house, dead. Always the same way. They wither, like fruit rotting on the branch. And when they're gone, their eyes..." He stopped himself, his lips pressed thin. "She takes their eyes." I tried to laugh, to convince myself they were just feeding into the hysteria, but deep down I knew the truth. No matter where I was, I felt her presence, like a hand lightly pressing against my shoulder every waking moment, like soft breath against my neck while I tried to sleep. The worst part wasn't the hauntings anymore. It was the certainty building in me that she didn't just haunt the house. She lives in me now. I tried leaving Ashford for good, packed what little I had into my car and drove 2 states west. The first night in a cheap Ohio motel, I thought I was safe. But when I turned on the shower, muddy water poured from the faucet. The smell was unmistakable, rotted earth, the same stench that burst from the floorboards when I first uncovered her. On the bathroom mirror, words appeared in dripping brown letters. "You can't leave." And in the warped reflection, I saw her behind me, her eyeless face pressed almost against my own. I ran, packed again, and drove through the night,
back to Massachusetts, back toward the house. It wasn't just a haunting anymore. It was a tether. Back at the Ashford Library, I searched deeper. Church records, town documents, old family writings. Eventually, I found a weather-beaten journal locked away in a box of estate donations. It belonged to the Bishop family. The entries told a story of fear. Eleanor was accused of speaking to things in the woods, of singing in dead languages. Neighbors whispered she would vanish for hours, returning with twigs in her hair and strange burns on her skin. Her father confessed in the journal. I heard her in the cellar, not speaking but hissing, talking to the dark like it had something to give her. They say she made bargains. They say she waits for me while I sleep. The final entry chilled me to the bone. We bury her alive tonight. Forgive me, God, but it is the only way. The floor will hold her. The floor must always hold her. After reading that, the scratches started appearing not just on my skin, but in places I couldn't explain, etched into my walls, into my car doors, even across my laptop's screen. Always the same jagged word, mine. My reflection stopped matching me altogether. By the second week back, when I dared glance into any mirror for too long, it wasn't my body looking back at all. It was hers. Skeletal arms, blackened sockets, her jaw forever stretching. I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing myself. I don't clearly remember how I ended back inside the house. Sometimes I think she walked me there like a puppet. Other times I think part of me wanted to go, just to end the torment. The house greeted me like it had been waiting. Doors opened on their own. The air pulsed with heat and then cold, as though the building itself was inhaling and exhaling. The floorboards in the living room began to creak on their own. Slowly, one by one, they shifted. And then, as impossible as it sounds, they sank inward, opening like a mouth, widening, gaping. From that black pit, she rose, Eleanor Bishop, bones wrapped in rags, hair matted with centuries of soil, fingers clutching at the air like claws. Her empty sockets locked on me, yet I still felt the weight of her gaze. Her voice didn't come from her mouth. It came from the house itself. You breathed my air. You dreamed my dreams. She pointed at me with one trembling, rotted finger. Now you finish what they began. The pain came first, like insects burrowing under my skin, like glass grinding in my veins. I dropped to my knees, screaming. My nails blackened and cracked. My eyes burned like fire until everything went dark, as though they had been burned away. And then I saw, not with my eyes, but with something else. I saw every person who had lived in the house. I saw their bodies wasting, their faces hollowing, their eyes plucked from bloody sockets by Eleanor's delicate skeletal fingers, over and over. Centuries of feeding, centuries of her keeping herself alive through us. And I realized she wasn't trapped beneath the house. She was the house. The walls, the whispers, the rotting pipes that carried her breath into every room. And now, piece by piece, she was inside me. I don't know how long I've been here. The days blur, the nights stretch like years, but I know this much. The house no longer frightens me, because I am the house. I hear footsteps at night that aren't mine. I feel the creak of the stairs like bones shifting in my own body. And when strangers stop at the end of Ashford Lane, curious about the abandoned place with the sagging roof, I whisper to them, "Come in, stay a while." They will. They always do. And when they try to leave, when they realize something is wrong, it's too late, because Eleanor Bishop is hungry, and so am I.
I used to think endings were neat, that horror stories closed with either death or survival. But what I've learned here is that some endings don't end at all. They stretch outward, like mold spreading through a wall, unseen but inevitable. It's been months since the night I became part of the house. Or at least, I think it's been months. Time doesn't work the same here. The sun still rises and falls outside those cracked windows, but for me, everything is twilight. A dull gray haze where shadows breathe and walls pulse. I remember fighting her at first. I screamed, clawed at my own skin, trying to tear her out of me. But the more I thought, the deeper she sank. Her whispers turned into thoughts in my own voice. Her hunger curled in my stomach. The line blurred until resisting was pointless. Now, I am not sure where I end and where Eleanor begins. I hear them sometimes. Hikers straying too far from the trail. College kids daring each other. Small-town wanderers drawn by stories they pretend not to believe. The floorboards always sigh when they step inside. The air turns heavier, thicker, pressing against their lungs. Some of them laugh nervously. Some of them whisper about the shadows. And I wait. I never rush them anymore. The house does the work for me. The whisper starts soft, indistinguishable background murmurings. Then words. Then screams. Last week, a boy barely 19 staggered into the living room, his flashlight trembling in his hand. He called for his friends. His voice cracked when no one answered. I could feel his pulse in my teeth. When the boards lifted and Eleanor rose through me, with me, he didn't even run. He froze, wide-eyed, as if he had always known this was the way it would end. We feasted. The people of Ashford never speak about this house aloud, but they know. Sometimes I see them from the cracked porch windows, someone driving by too slowly, eyes fixed on the sagging roof, lips moving in a hurried prayer. Nobody dares come to stop it. Nobody calls the police about the screams. Because they understand what the bishops built all those centuries ago. They gave her to this place. They thought burying her alive would end it. Instead, they built a god. A god that demands a constant tithe of fear and flesh. And now, I am her priest. At night, when the woods are quiet and the roads are still, the hunger rises. It chews through me like fire. I remember food once. Bread, coffee, meat sizzling in a pan. Those things mean nothing now. The only thing that quiets the hunger is the sound of footsteps on the porch, the rattle of the doorknob, the slow creak of someone walking into my lungs. I don't sleep anymore. Sleep is for the living. I lie in my own walls, under my own floorboards, waiting. And when they whisper through cracked lips, I just want to leave. I always answer the same way, my voice dripping from the ceiling, the floor, the breath between their ears. You can't. I started this confession months ago, thinking it might free me, that if I wrote the truth, it would bind her again. But the words only draw me deeper. And maybe that's the real curse, that the more you know about Ashford House, the faster you belong to it. If you've read this far, maybe you feel it already. That cold breath creeping along your spine, even though you're nowhere near Massachusetts. That pressure on your chest that wasn't there before you started reading. That's her. She doesn't need you to be here anymore. She has me as her door, and now that you've listened, you'll hear her voice soon too. If you hear scratching tonight, don't look for the source. If you hear your floor creak when you're alone, don't follow it. And if you wake with dirt beneath your nails, know this: you are already hers. I don't know if anyone will ever believe me. Maybe that's fine. Maybe this is just for me. But if you're reading this, then I need you to understand something. What happened to me on Ashford Lane wasn't just a nightmare. It wasn't in my head. It was real. And now, because I've told it, it might never end for you either. I moved from Chicago to Ashford, Massachusetts in the fall of 2021. I had been looking for peace after a brutal divorce, and I wanted distance from everything. The city noise, the people, the reminders of my old life. When my realtor told me about the old colonial just a few miles outside town, sitting on a quiet piece of land surrounded by oak and birch trees, I felt something inside me click. The house at 412 Ashford Lane was older than the United States itself. White paint peeled off its wood siding, tall windows stared out blankly like empty eyes, and the roof sagged as if it had grown weary. But the price was shockingly low. I should have asked why.
No one had lived there in decades, the realtor said. Folks around here call it the Ashford House, she explained quickly, like she didn't want to say too much. Just be mindful. It's got history. History. That word should have been enough. I signed the papers anyway. The first night was quiet. Too quiet. The only sounds were the crickets and the sighing of autumn wind through the trees. I set up a mattress on the bare floor of the upstairs bedroom, too tired to unpack anything. But around 3 a.m., I woke up. Something had pulled me from sleep, like the sensation of somebody standing too close. My chest was heavy. The air seemed thicker than it had when I went to bed. I turned over. The bedroom door was open. I knew I had closed it. The hall beyond was pitch black, even though there was a window at the end of it. The darkness seemed wrong, like it wasn't just absence of light, but something denser. For a long second, I thought I saw movement ripple within it. I got up and shut the door, locked it, sat back down with my heart pounding. It was my imagination, I told myself. Old houses make noises, creaks, drafts. But as I drifted back into an easy sleep, I thought I heard whispering behind the closed door. The whispering came back the second night, clearer, not just sounds, but phrases, and not just one voice, dozens, each faint like they were pressed against the walls, all circling the same words: get out. At dawn, silence always returned, but every morning when I went downstairs, I found the wooden chairs at the kitchen table turned ever so slightly away, as if someone had gotten up halfway through dinner. I asked around town. Most people shut me out as soon as I mentioned Ashford Lane. But one night, sitting at the bar, an old man with a trembling voice leaned close and whispered, "They buried her under the floorboards, you know, long time ago. She was just a girl." The warped floorboards in the living room called to me after that. One night, I pried them open with a crowbar. The smell hit me first, foul and metallic, even after centuries. My phone light revealed bones curled in the fetal position, small bones, human. A burlap sack clung to the skull, and claw marks gouged the wood from inside. That night, I dreamed of her, properly. A girl with hollow sockets where her eyes should be, pale skin stretched tight, hair hanging in filthy clumps. She crawled across my bedroom floor, dragging her knees raw, her jaw creaking open. When I woke, dirt was under my fingernails. The whispering changed after that. They weren't outside the door anymore. They were inside the room. The haunting escalated every night. Shadows gathered at the edge of my vision even when the moonlight burned bright. The bathroom mirror began to lag. My reflection didn't move the same time I did. Doorknobs rattled. Sometimes they turned. I set my phone to record one night. Playback revealed hours of screaming, distorted with rage. Underneath, a phrase pulsed in repetition. "You are mine." I begged a priest to bless the place. He lasted 10 minutes before the vial shattered in his hand. He left shaking, muttering, "She does not want me. She wants you." I started researching, pouring through Ashford's library archives. I found it in the brittle newspapers of 1803. Local girl accused of witchcraft, bound and buried under her family floor. Name withheld. Margins later revealed Eleanor Bishop. The floorboards I had pried open repaired themselves within days. It was as if the house rejected wounds, refusing to stay exposed. Then came the possession. I saw her in the mirror where I should be, her eyeless sockets, her jaw splitting impossibly wide. My skin grew paler, my body thinner every day, until I could no longer dismiss the truth. I wasn't just haunted, I was becoming hers. Two townsfolk confronted me at the edge of the driveway. They warned me, "She marks you, always the same. She takes their eyes." I tried fleeing, but she followed. Muddy water poured from hotel faucets on the mirror. "You can't leave." Back in Ashford, I discovered the Bishop Journal. The father wrote, "We bury her alive tonight. The floor must hold her." But the floor didn't hold her. It preserved her. The house's hunger consumed me. Scratches appeared, not just on my skin, but carved into my belongings, carved into reality itself. Always the same word, mine. I blacked out one final night inside the house. What I remember is the living room opening like a mouth, Eleanor rising from the dark, bones and rags and soil, pointing at me. "You breathed my air. You dreamed my dreams. Now finish what they began." The next moment, agony tore through me. My eyes burned with fire until darkness swallowed my world. And then I knew. She wasn't trapped beneath the house. She was the house. Now I see through the walls. I feel footsteps on the stairs.
Strangers wander inside, thinking they're explorers, skeptics, kids daring each other. The whispers draw them deeper, and when they realize they're not alone, it's too late. I am her door. I am her priest. And when they beg to leave, when they claw at the door handles, I whisper what was whispered to me. You can't. If you've read this far, maybe you already hear her voice. Maybe the scratches will start for you tonight. Faint at first, then closer. Maybe when you sleep, you'll wake up at 3 a.m. to find your door open, though you know you closed it. When that happens, don't look down the hall, because if you do, you'll see her, crawling, waiting, and once you see her, she'll never let you go, because now you are hers.